Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast is number 1395. The topic is Q&A and the title is How to Rehab a Strained Muscle. So this topic came up with a new client, so I thought it would be good to kind of share what we're going through and what other people can do if they're experiencing something similar. So the client and I just started, and actually coming into this program, they have a strained pec. Now they are wanting to compete in a powerlifting competition. They have competed in one recently, but they annoyed their pec, their chest muscle, before that competition, I believe, and then kind of re-aggravated it pretty severely in the last competition. And then they wanted to touch base and work together with me so that way they can keep progressing. So it's a young client, I think 16 years old, and crazy strong and great technique. I actually talked about this client in a recent podcast number 1393, so just 2 podcasts ago. I talked about his squat and his bench techniques, and then the feedback I gave him for his technique. So he's going to be awesome. He's going to set some records. He already set records in his first meet, so he's going to destroy some records, and he's going to do great. However, we do want to address that chest muscle. So if you have a muscle that feels strained, and especially, like, how would we know if it's like a bad strain versus an okay strain, is if it's one side, not the other. If it feels kind of like a seizing, cramping, like twingy type pain, but it's not on the other side. Just something that kind of feels like, oh man, this side's really tight, but the other side's fine. And you'll also just kind of feel other nuances. But one of the more glaring ways of knowing is that from one side to the other it feels different. And then also, if you do a workout and everything else feels like it's recovered, a couple days later, but that one thing is still really freaking annoyed, you could have strained it. So for this young guy, we talked about his technique, and given his technique that he was releasing mid-back squeeze, he was losing shoulder positioning, and then when he would drive out of the bottom, he would have to flex his pecs really hard, but without the shoulders being braced properly, so he strained his pec minor. Now, I've actually had the same issue whenever I was younger, and I actually made the same mistake technique-wise, so it's kind of, good in the sense that I can relate. Sad that I have to relate to anything. I hope he was okay. I wish he didn't have the injury. But we're going to be able to address it pretty quickly. I've been able to get past that and still bench 430. That's even after breaking my collarbone 3 times, and I have metal plates in my collarbone. So he can definitely do this, and he's going to do great. But I figured we'd talk through the process we're going through, so if you have any strained muscle yourself, you can apply the same concepts. So what we're going to first start with is address tightness and promote healing. Typically, especially if it's been annoyed for a while, so he's been going on, I think, at least 6 or 7 weeks, I think, of this thing being annoyed every single week, if not twice a week, because he benches and does chest and stuff like twice a week. So it's been a while. Your body is going to have attempted to protect it, and one of the ways it tries to protect a singular muscle is by tightening up everything around it. So it tries to shift some of that stress load into nearby tissues, and then the nearby tissues tend to be overworked and super tight because they're doing more than their fair share of the work. So one of the things we want to do is to open up the injured tissue or the annoyed tissue. It's probably going to be very, very tight, and the body has kind of clamped down on the rigidity of that muscle, the tone. It made it very tight tissue tone to try to protect it by preventing stretch loading. A muscle would not want to stretch open all the way if it was not safe and if it didn't feel fully strong, fully healed. So it's going to tighten down. So that's going to be one thing we do. A great one for the chest is you can go to YouTube and type in Brutal Iron Gym lacrosse ball rolling to address tight chest. So we're going to use a lacrosse ball. It's a nice rubbery kind of hard ball. If you use a tennis ball, you're just going to smush it. It's not solid enough. A lacrosse ball freaking works great. So lacrosse ball has a nice rubber texture to it. It has good firmness, but it does have some give. So it's a really good texture for this type of therapy. But we're going to be doing rolling into the tissue with the lacrosse ball. It's kind of like foam rolling, but a much smaller surface area, so you can kind of get deeper into the tissues. Now, you can also do, deep tissue massage and all that stuff, but that's, how much money per session. Where a lacrosse ball, I think, is like $1 or $2. And then you can do as many sessions as you want. So he's going to start every single workout with that therapy on his chest. And it's only about maybe 1 to 2 minutes per side of the chest. We're even going to do the healthy side because it has probably also gathered strain by the body trying to shift weight off that injured side, so it probably overloaded the healthy side, and it has its own fair share of accumulating stress that beyond what it should. So not only do we want to help the injured part, we want to help everything around it. Now, one of the ways to help everything around it is by reducing the tension within the injured muscle, because if it relaxes, it can accept more weight loads and more of its own work, so then that reduces work off the other muscles. So you can help address the other muscles by simply just taking care of the one that's annoyed. But if you also notice other muscles, nearby muscles are tight, you do want to do therapies for them as well. So he'll be starting every workout with that. Now, why do we do every workout? Because if you just do it once or twice a week, it doesn't work as well. You want to do it 3-4 times. If you're already in the gym 3-4 times, it's a great way to remember. And then also, when you do squats, especially if you're doing a low bar position, you're going to pull on that chest tissue to really get the bar into that low bar position. If we don't address this, it can cause forward rotation of the shoulder, especially on the injured side, and that can cause the kind of scapula, the shoulder blades, to be out of position in the squat, and then all of a sudden you end up straining the shoulder and the pec even more, and then you start straining other things because you're not squatting correctly. So you can definitely have cascading effects into other lifts. So we're going to be doing that at the beginning of every workout. It's only about a minute or two per side, pretty quick, pretty easy. And then in his workouts for his chest, we're going to be focusing on blood flow, just tons and tons of blood flow. When something is annoyed, you want to remind the body that it's annoyed, but you don't want to make it worse. So if a tissue is annoyed and then I just never touch it, I never do anything to it, our body says, okay, problem solved. That's not what we want. The body's only going to fix tissues to meet the stimulus and the demand that is on that tissue. So if you reduce the demand, you're going to reduce the degree in which the body will try to fix that tissue. So it's important to continue to go back into the tissue and get some blood flow and let the body go, oh wow, that's that's still messed up, that's still kind of annoyed. And we go, yeah, send more protein, send more healing agents in there, build it bigger, do what you gotta do. And then that promotes more and more healing. But as I said, we want to remind the body it's annoyed, not actually make it worse. So one of the ways, and this is just a general kind of format, but it's pretty true to how I do therapies and stuff like this, is we would do kind of some light isolation work and even some light compound movement work. So for the chest, we would do some light machine flies, cable crossovers, maybe some dumbbell incline presses. And for those, in order to control the intensity, in order to control and limit the weight load, we're going to be looking for 60 to 120 second sets. So 1 to 2 minute sets. If he can't lift the weight for full 60 seconds of continuous time under tension, it's too heavy. Now, I have had clients where we've actually gone through, they've had connective tissue diseases, they've had severe muscle tears, and we've even done sets up to 5 minutes where they had to have continual tension for 5 minutes. I mean, you try to press 20-pound dumbbells for 2 minutes and your arms are going to want to fall off. But it's not heavy enough that the weight is going to cause extra micro tissue tears to the muscle tissue. It's just going to cause extreme blood flow. And that blood flow is going to ignite some inflammation, but we're not going to have any damage to the tissue. We're basically just going to remind the body that this tissue is not working properly. Come back in here and fix this. So none of these things, the machine flies, cable crossovers, dumbbell incline presses, none of them, not even remotely close, are to be done for any kind of weight. In the sense that the weight is absolutely secondary to the time frame. So I would rather you grab 5-pound dumbbells. Maybe you get on a chest fly machine, you put it at 10 pounds, and you go for 2 minutes, and you go, oh crap, that was way too light. Let me go up to 20. It's way better to waste a minute or two of sets and then work up rather than to guess too heavy and annoy something. So, and then also remember, if you start into something too heavy and you're like at 20 seconds, you're like, oh crap, this is kind of getting, kind of painful. Stop. You don't have to do the full 60 seconds if you already know it's stupid. If you already know, like, oh no, this does not feel good, stop, go even lighter. What you should feel is that your body's saying, I don't like this. I'm okay with this. And I'm not sending any red flags that I need to quit, but I don't like it. And that's going to be the feeling your body's going to send you is, I'm okay, but I don't like this. And that was something we would go through. We might even do push-ups depending on how annoyed the tissues are and how strong the person already is with push-ups. If they're a 150-pound person and they can crank out 1,000 push-ups, then even with a strained pec, push-ups are pretty safe. You can even do elevated push-ups. So we have Sorinex racks in our gym that have holes on all 4 sides of the squat rack posts at 1 inch size and diameter. So we have band pegs, and we use those actually in the racks as variable heights for rows and actually inverted rows as well. So we might do, some push-ups where hands are elevated, maybe hole number 6. And then, like, the next week we go down to hole number 5, the next week down to hole number 4, next week down to hole number 3, and maybe we work our way down to the ground. But the idea is you do it in small increments. You maintain that 1 to 2 minutes of total time under tensional sets. So it's no resting whatsoever, continuous tension for 60 to 120 seconds. Now, we still want to keep the other tissue strong. So, for example, this is a power lifter. He's going to want to be good at bench in the long run. So, rather than while we wait for his chest to heal, we just abandon training his shoulders and his triceps. That's not really going to be very helpful. Let's keep those suckers strong. Let's keep them strong enough to protect his chest when we go back to some heavy lifting. So we are still going to do like front raises, front shoulder raises, maybe tricep press downs. We're not going to do like dips because that's still chest involved, but we're going to do isolative work for the shoulders and the triceps, whatever the chest doesn't get annoyed by. And then that's going to make sure that we maintain strength in the accessory kind of muscles, the secondary muscles. Some argue the triceps are the primary muscle, bench press, but we're going to maintain the other muscles that are involved in that lift to be super duper strong. We don't want to back off on the intensity of them at all, as long as it doesn't interfere with the chest being inflamed or annoyed or damaged. So, for example, I might not do max effort skull crushers because my chest still has to fire to stabilize my upper arm bone, but I could do max effort tricep press downs because my chest doesn't have to work to stabilize that. So you do have to pick your isolations well to make sure you don't have collateral damage that becomes an issue. So that's what we're going to do for the first part here, is address tightness and promote healing. Then, after that stage, and that stage can be 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. It kind of depends on how long the injury has been around and how severe the strain is. There's no minimal time frame. There's no maximal time frame. In general, I move into the next phase, which is strengthening slowly and safely. Once the crossball therapy kind of doesn't feel like it's doing much from session to session, and you'll notice when you first start it, like, holy crap, it's super miserable, super tight, and I get a huge range of motion opening from the therapy. Once you stop feeling any of that, and once you're maxing out how heavy you can go for the 60 to 120 second exercises, meaning you can go full blast, full intensity, beast mode, and if you tried to go any heavier, you wouldn't be able to make 60 seconds. That actually shows the tissue has gotten a lot stronger, so that's a really good indicator it's time to move on to the next stage. So the next stage is the strengthening slowly and safely. So I would go back to kind of the main variation. So if you have a strain related to squats, you would go back to squats. If you have a strain related to deadlift, you go back to deadlift. If you have a strain related to whatever the heck it is that you're having trouble doing, go back to doing that. So for this athlete, we're going to go back to barbell benching, but we're going to do maybe a protected variation, and maybe that will be a closer closer grip. So we're going to narrow his grip up by about like 2 fingers width. That includes more triceps and kind of takes a little bit of the chest away. And then depending on where the person trains or what equipment they have access to, we might do reverse band benching as well. So in our gym, my dad and I made, to the best of my knowledge, the only standalone bench that has reverse band capabilities that isn't just like a squat rack. But we actually have a pretty cool bench in our gym that my dad and I modified that has the ability to do reverse band benching. So we do that all the time with our clients. It's a great way to overload the bench press technique to really push progressions, especially in people who are weaker in the bench press. So we're going to do that. Reverse band bench pressing allows it to be heavier at the top and lighter at the bottom. So when the chest is most stretched, when it has the most potential for strain, it's going to actually be the lightest within the lift. But then as you press back up to the top, the bands are giving less assistance, so it starts to feel heavier and heavier, and that helps work in the front shoulder and the tricep. So that way you still build those muscles and keep them nice and strong. So the narrower grip protects the chest. Reverse band, again, protects the chest. And we're going to work into some kind of protective variation. If you can't do reverse band, just at least do narrow grip, and that'll help protect it as well. But we're going to go into controlled speed, and I'll talk about that in a second, working sets of 30 to 60 seconds. So once we've maximized how heavy we can go for 60 to 120 seconds, we're going to bring that time under tension range down to allow for greater weight load, but we're not just going to jump right back to like 1 rep maxes. So we want to do sets of 30 to 60 seconds, and I want to do very controlled pacing. So you'd want to control the eccentric, control the concentric, have no explosive effort. Now, there is tempo speeds that people will use in reference to the eccentric, the time you stay at a full extension, the concentric, and then the time you stay at the full contraction. So we might do, say, like a 3 seconds on the way down. So as you lower the bar, you're going to count 1, 2, 3. And then when it gets your chest, you're going to count to 1, go 1. And then the press back up, maybe a little bit faster, maybe 2 seconds, so 1, 2. And then you're going to hold at the top and get a breath back in. Make sure your stabilization is there in your shoulder blades. Make sure your technique is good. So 1 rep might be starting from the very top. You're going to start, go 1. You're starting the way down. So at the very top, you're going to start the way down, go 1, 2, 3. Then at your chest, you're going to go 1. Then as you press back up, 1, 2. Then at the top, hold 1. Tighten back up and go back down. So it might be, if you count 3, 2, 1, then 1, then 1, 2, then 1. Everybody counts a lot faster than actual, normal seconds. So if anybody tells you, I did a 10-second rep, it's like, bullshit. You watch the timer and you're like, that was 6.3 seconds. You're so full of crap. When you're under weight load, time goes a lot slower. So you end up moving a lot faster than you think you do. So a count of 3, 1, 2, 1 would be the kind of the tempo counts, the tempo numbers. That sounds like it should take 7 seconds, but you might take 4 to 5. So if you're doing 30 seconds minimum, you're looking at 6 to 10, maybe 6 to 12 reps, somewhere in there, but it's probably going to be over 5 reps in order to stay within the 30 to 60 seconds. So that gives us much safer speed control. So if the muscle starts to feel strained, you don't blow past the strain and then have to catch yourself and go, oh crap, that really hurt. As you're contracting it, you go, oh, that doesn't feel good. And then you'll be able to back out if you need to. So that's the idea for bringing back in the main lift. You want to do sets of 30 to 60 seconds, no explosion, 0 explosion, and no momentum. And then for the other things you're doing, machine flies, cable crossovers, dumbbell incline presses, push-ups, things like that, you're going to go from the 60 to 120 second range down to that 30 to 60 second range as well. So you're going to start pushing the intensity on those lifts as well. Now, as those are feeling good, as it feels like you're okay, I've pretty much maxed out as much weight as I can do for 30 seconds, I'm ready now to go under 30 seconds. So I've been pushing my body. I've been maxing out these efforts of 30 to 60 seconds. I've been recovering well in between sessions. So again, this might be another 4, 6, 8 weeks or so. You might spend 8 weeks in the first phase, 8 weeks in this phase. Now, 16 weeks sounds like an eternity when you can't lift the way you want to lift, but 4 months out of your entire year, entire life is not going to matter at all. We've wasted more than 4 months of our life in many other ways. This one isn't a waste, it's an investment. So it's a really good idea to do this. Then when we get into the next phase, kind of the last phase really, is just going to be like retesting the muscle back to like a maximum intensity. So you're still going to be in that protected variation of the lift. I would not open back up to full regular movements so if you're doing box squats to help protect a hamstring, don't just go back to free weight squats yet. So maintain the box squat. If you're doing whatever variation of deadlift that allows you to feel protected, whatever that might be, if you're doing elevated deadlifts, reverse band deadlifts, blah, 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 you want to keep that, okay? So keep the protected variation. You're going to spend a couple workouts maxing out between 10 to 20 seconds of time or retention with weight load. Then you're going to spend a workout doing like a maximum effort of 3, then a maximum effort of 2, then a maximum single. If you can do a single near maximal, like near the best you can do, like an RPE of 10, if you can do maximum intensity for a single in the protected version, then you're probably good to like widen back out your grip, get rid of the box squat, get like open back up to the competition style lift or the regular technique. But go back to the sets of 10 to 20 seconds, then the sets of 3, the sets of 2, then the set of 1. So don't just go from the protected variation to a 1 rep max of the basic variation. Go back through that sequence of the 10 to 20 second sets, and then the 3, the 2, and the 1. Okay? So in between those heaviest ones, you want to be very, very, very mindful of your recovery. Is that muscle feeling the same type of recovery need as every other muscle? Or is it lagging behind? If it's lagging behind, do not push the intensity anymore. So maybe you did max effort sets of 20 seconds. And you're like, dang, that thing's still slightly annoyed. Not bad. I definitely don't feel like I've regressed, but I can tell it's, just a little bit sluggish, a little bit slow to recover. Well, then go back to the 20 seconds, like stay there. Don't try to progress into anything heavier yet until the tissue feels just like every other tissue. Now, what's really important to know is during all of this is a couple things. Number one is still train the muscles that are not annoyed as aggressive and miserably awesome as possible. Try not to back off on your intensity of anything else. Keep everything else as strong as possible because it's going to help protect your injury. Okay. Now you might have to do exercise selections, very specific exercise selections to not annoy the injury. So for example, you can't do, max effort skull crushers if you have an annoyed pec because your pec can't hold your upper arm in position. So you have to do tricep press downs. So there's going to be whatever your injury is, you're going to have to be very careful about which exercises you pick, even for other muscles, because the muscle that you have strained might be a stabilizer for that exercise. So you have to be very careful on that. The other things are you want to address your nutrition, hydration, and sleep. Make sure they're all as freaking perfect as possible because it's your nutrition that provides the material that the tissue will be fixed with. Our muscles are made of protein. A brick house is made of bricks, right? Our muscles are made of protein. So if you're not eating the fullest amount of protein, you will not get the fullest amount of muscular recovery. So you should be freaking on top of your food, on top of it. Do not go into caloric deficit when you're trying to heal up a muscle tissue. Believe me, I've done that. That was stupid. I made that mistake when I was younger. It cost me a rehab that took a hell of a lot longer than it should have. So I'm telling you from firsthand experience, don't do that. Plus, kind of nutritional knowledge and formal education and formal knowledge will tell you not to do that. But also, I did it because I was a dummy and I didn't want to get fat while I was trying to recover. And I was a big dum-dum and made everything much worse for myself. So don't go into a caloric deficit at all. At least eat maintenance calories, at least. But do not go into a caloric deficit. Have your protein at like 1 gram per pound of body weight, like lean body weight, maybe even 1.25 grams per pound of lean body weight. Really get that protein in. You should be like sleeping with a protein tub of protein powder like in your bed. So protein. Then if you feel like you're like, oh man, I don't want to get a fat belly, I don't want to, gain a bunch of weight, blah, 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 add really low intensity cardio. So maybe going for walks, like 10-minute walks every day, or a 10-minute walk after your workout. But do not go into a freaking caloric deficit. Keep eating your food and keep your protein jacked up sky high. Okay? Then for sleep, get some freaking sleep. Sleep is extremely important for muscular health recovery. So I had a rule for one of my clients recently who was a corrective therapy, like a corrective rehab kind of client. And I said, if you don't sleep 6 hours, if you don't even sleep 6 hours, you can't work out that day. Now, this is somebody who's addicted to workout. And I knew that. So I was a big fat jerk. And he was also I don't even know how to explain this because I didn't even think that I was going to tell this part of it. Just a busy person. He doesn't sleep much. So I told him, you need to start prioritizing your sleep. And he's like, well, I'm sleeping as much as I can. I'm like, yeah, you could tell that to your muscle tissue. So I told him, if you don't sleep 6 hours, you can't work out. And he did a very good job of getting 6 hour sleeps in. And then we really want to aim for like 7 to 8 hours with maybe even extra naps if you can. I understand everybody's an adult and everybody's got a million and one things to do. So sleep might not be something that you can, you might not be able to add 2 hours a night of sleep. But you do need to be aware that sleep impacts muscular recovery. It does. It really, really does. It's a very important factor. So try to turn off electronics, 30 minutes or so before you want to actually be sleeping. If you're just sitting there watching your phone, you're not going to fall asleep. Get off your damn phone, get off the couch, go lay in bed, listen to an audiobook, try to read a physical book. They still make those nowadays. So people are still publishing books. Try to read one. But just try to get away from electronics, and that'll help you fall asleep. Set an alarm to go lay in bed. Even if you're not tired, you'll actually surprise yourself. Often people will fall asleep if they just quiet themselves and calm down. But sleep helps a lot. So definitely attack that. No caloric deficit, super high protein, and make sure you still train your other muscles as strong as they can be, as maximum intensity. Just be careful of the collateral damage. Make sure that whatever is strained isn't a stabilizer for the exercises you're picking. Okay, well, I hope this was helpful. Pretty cool kind of to know that this is a process we go through. I've done this hundreds of times, and it works every time. So it's a nice little sequence to go through. If anybody has any questions, if you're struggling with any kind of recovery, I'm always available. My email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. This stuff is very doable. I do it all the time for clients. So if there really is any strain or anything you're dealing with and it hasn't been able to go away, just let me know and I'll help you out. Now we'll get it fixed up. Okay, cool. Well, if you like today's podcast or the podcast in general, please consider sharing the podcast. The more people we share it with, the more people can help. That's the whole goal of this thing. Just try to help as many people as we possibly can. And then thank you to the patrons of the podcast people who financially help the podcast so we can actually do that goal of making podcasts every single day and keeping them for free and helping as many people as possible. It's really only thanks to the patrons. The hosting cost of the podcast is well over $1,000 a year. I give an hour to it every single day. I try my best to schedule things as best as I can, because here I am harping on you guys about sleep, and it's 2:26 a.m. that I'm recording this one. Life is crazy sometimes, and you have to decide what's important to you, and you have to try to make time for it. So this is something that is important to me. I give a lot to it because I believe it has a lot of value. And I've seen firsthand from people's messages and the clients I've worked with that this information really does make a difference for people. So I will take the time to make a podcast at 2:26 a.m. because I believe it has that much importance. So I hope that it's important to you. I hope that it's been helpful to you. And if it has, please consider sharing it or donating so we can keep this thing up and running. If you do want to donate, you can do so at our website at www.brutalirongym.com. You can do a one-time donation, monthly donation, yearly donation, anything. It all goes right to those hosting costs. So thank you very much. If you like the information we share in our podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. If you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, anything you want to know, let us know at our email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.